Okay, this is Justin Gargiulo, CEO and founder of VoterTrove, and we are going to talk about what is probably the most important page in the application. So, as you know, we store all your data in one spot, so it's all coming to the same server and same account. So, what we allow you to do from there is target and filter your outreach based on any of the data sets, data points you have in your app. So, this is the page where you do all your list selection and filtering of voters and contacts. So what I'm going to do is each list requires a name, obviously. So we're going to call this call list Texas. And you see here all of our list types. So we have call. If I select that, what's going to happen on my live count here, it's going to update with only records I have phone numbers for. So with every other type of outreach, for mail, you're just going to get records that have mailing addresses, and it gets householded, obviously. Walk lists, you need a resident street address. Raw is just essentially a raw data dump. It's just gonna, you can just download any CSV file you want with whatever fields based on whatever criteria you've chosen here. Robopoll, pass-through call, and robocall are all of our IVR features, our automated calls. So you can select any one of those, and what's going to happen is obviously you get those that have phone numbers, and if we have that cell phone information in your file, we obviously take those out of those lists and also remove people who have unsubscribed from previous auto calls. So that's what happens when you choose those buttons. Email, again, obviously it's an email list. You're only going to get records you have email addresses for. So this is going to update with your email addresses here. And text is the same thing. So text is going to be mobile numbers that have subscribed to receive text updates from your campaign. So we'll just kind of stick with call here as we kind of move forward. So you can see I've got 46,000 unique phone numbers on my list. So underneath here is where I'm going to have all the tagging and grouping of data that you've done in your own campaign. So the silo list. So the concept of the silo list is, and we talk more about it on the data upload tool, tutorial on that tool, but essentially a silo list is any list that does not have a state voter ID or a voter trove ID. So it could be an email list from a previous campaign. It could be a prospecting list. It could be a group of individuals who attended an event, a pro-life event or whatever it is. So when you've got that data, you can now upload that into our system. The system will automatically match that to records to the voter file where we have enough data. You need address, you need a bunch of stuff in there. So depending upon the file, you could match 5%, you could match 80%. So, but what we do from there is also allow you to, once the data is in, those records that have not been matched automatically, you can go in and match them yourself. And again, there's a tutorial on that part of the application to look at as well. So, but for our purposes on this page, what I wanted to explain is that these silo lists, although maybe they've been merged to the voter file, they still live separately. So you can still target them regardless of any vote history or political geography or anything. They live on their own in here at all times. So for instance, this call list re-upload, whatever that happens to be, bear with our naming here. It's just our demo account. There's a lot of crazy stuff in here, but so call list re-upload. So I'm just going to get the phone numbers on that specific list. So the other three, groups, profiles, and segments, are basically segmentation tools. So groups are default in the platform, and you can see their contributor, supporter, and volunteer. Can't add or remove any from there. We will probably be adding groups as we go along, but for groups, you can do a bulk upload into a group of a list. It could be a silo list, voter trove ID match, or state voter ID match into that specific group, or you can tag them individually, the voters or contacts on their individual profile page. So there's a couple ways you can tag for groups. Profiles and segments are, profiles we're kind of offering more as issue based. So I mean, you can see some of these in here are actually not issues, but and obviously this is internal to the campaign. You create them yourself. So for instance, pro-life, Second Amendment, taxes. So now maybe these are, you've done surveys, automated surveys or live contact surveys where you determine that they're pro-life or whatever. Now you've added them to that profile. So now you can turn around and now email them, call them, mail them based on that kind of micro-targeting data. Same thing with segments. Segments, I think, will probably be used more. And again, this is all up to the campaign and how you're going to use it. But for segments, we were thinking it is more of a likely unaffiliated voters or likely primary voters or some kind of universe of the voter file that's kind of independent of any specific issue. So you could actually target that way too. So I mean, the real concept behind the application is any of these things, segments, profiles, groups, and even silo lists are interchangeable in the sense that for outreach. So you can coordinate your robocall and have an email go out 2 weeks after based on people who listen to the robocall or whatever, participate in a patch the call. You can coordinate those outreach initiatives right here. So I won't select any of these for now. I'll just get into my geography here. So I've got my default would be district-wide. So this number is my district-wide number, but I can just kind of check that if I just wanted to do district-wide and be done and kind of move down with my list. But the geography query is really kind of this sort of cascading down, winnowing sort of filter. So let's say this is a pretty small district. So this is a small state house district in Florida. So I've got a couple towns in here though. So if I select Gulf Breeze, for instance, watch what happens to my precincts. So I had 46 precincts total, but now it goes down to 5 because I'm just going to get my precincts that are in Gulf Breeze. So, if you had 10 counties in your file, you select the counties, you're going to get only the towns that are in those counties, and then below them, only the precincts that are in those counties. So it's kind of this top-down approach to targeting for your political geography. So I'll grab a few precincts in here. And that should knock my number down to, so we've got 5,200 on my list. Party data. So party data is going to be just a straight, RDU. If you just wanted to do, all right, just give me Republicans, you can do that, and that's going to filter on the fly for you. Or if you wanted to use our household mix and say, well, I really just want pure Republicans, you can do that as well. So that number populates over there. So now I've got my vote history. So a couple different ways you can do it. 1 through 5 is going to be kind of your standard sort of 1 out of the last 5, 2 out of the last 5, 3 out of the last 5, 4 out of the last 5, 5 out of the last 5, etc. So you can do that for your general score, which would be the past 5 general elections, primary score, past 5 primaries. Absentee, obviously, past 5, either primary or general, they voted absentee. And early voting for our early voting states where, out of how many of the past elections, primary or generals, they voted early. So that's a way to target that. Now, I think most people may want to do, in terms of vote history, by year. So we really spent a lot of time on this part of the application, really happy with it. The feedback's been really good. It's just a really easy to use way to target for years based on vote history. So if I've got my, this is basically my AND statement. So if I say, well, I want everyone who voted in both 2008 and 2010. I select them both there. You can see my number populates with the count there. But now if I want to add in any specific year, this is actually my OR statement. So I can say, well, I want people who voted in both 2008 and 2010, but if they voted in 2012 presidential primary, I think they're a pretty likely voter anyway. So let's add them to the top there. So you can see the number kind of pops up to 1739. You can also exclude specific years if you wanted to, and I think this is probably more applicable to if you're looking for drop-off voters. So, obviously people who vote in presidentials and not gubernatorials, those types of folks, you can do that here. Now below, you get your statement, kind of plain English, voters who voted in all the following, gives you the years, tells you, your OR statement would be below here, any of the following. So that's your vote history part of it. Everything from down here is going to depend on what we have in your file. So for demographics, typically we'll have date of birth, so we can generate this age range based on that. So if I want to do everybody that's, say, 55 and over, I can choose them here. And you see it populates there. And now, of course, with anything else, I can clear my selection and kind of just clear that part of it out. Gender, if we've got that in the file, you can add that here. Voter trove score. So this is interesting. This is where we're actually, because we do all this outreach in the application, we're doing email, we're doing patch-through calls, we're doing robocalls, we're surveys, we're doing all this stuff. So what we're able to do is to take an individual voter or contact and say, okay, well, if they've received 8 emails, they've opened 4, they've clicked on 2, through on 2, they've participated in a patch-through call, maybe they listened to a robocall and it was 47 out of 62 seconds. All of this goes into a score that we've created that really is going to give you an indication of how engaged they are in your campaign. How interested are they? So, say in that example, they opened 4, they clicked on 2, the patch through calls and all that. This voter is now 73 out of 100. So now you kind of come back in and say, well, give me everybody that is 70 and over, because I know they're interested in what we're talking about, and maybe you want to ask them for money, or maybe you want to ask them to come to an event or make some phone calls for you. So you can do all of that right here from that voter trove score. So below that, campaign data. So this is going to be all this outreach that you've done. Again, we track that. For a mail list, when you pull a mail list, you can actually go back in to the My List page and mark that as being mailed. So it'd be like mailed yes. And then what that does is give a +1 basically to every household that received a piece of mail. So now you want to come in and say, well, give me everybody that we want to do a mailer, but if we've mailed people, a lot more than 3 times, we don't want to mail them. So you'd come in here and say mailed yes less than 3 times. So and to pull it that way. Called in Canvas, same concept, obviously applying to calls, the live contact, not the auto polls at this point, or robocalls, but in Canvas, how many doors, how many times has their door been knocked on? You can query that way as well. Non-survey data and survey data. So the difference between non-survey data and survey data, non-survey data is basically any field you've added, a free field you've added at any time in the application. I would give the example of like, lawn sign, or attended an event, or something like that, where you just want to store that single field. It's not really a survey necessarily. You just want to store that in your data. So you can create that as a custom field at any time in the application. It gets added. You can include those questions in surveys, live contact surveys for your call from home, or knocking on a door, so you can get data in there. And then from here, you can actually target that specifically. But the other part of this non-survey data is stuff that has been imported into Voter Trove. So for instance, you've pulled a raw list with a Voter Trove ID, given it to a vendor to append email addresses. Actually, email address is not the best example. To append consumer data, say. So the vendor gives it back to you. You've got all your voters in there with the consumer data appended. Now you bring it back in. We obviously merge that automatically with that Voter Trove ID. So now you've got available on the front end here under non-survey data all the consumer data related to those voters. So you can make your queries and make your polls right through there. So that's non-survey data. Survey data is where you've created surveys in Voter Trove for purposes of either live contact, knock on the door, or a call from phone bank, call from home, or centralized phone bank, or an auto poll. So you can do either of those 3, create them in the platform, and deploy them pretty quickly. So the results are here. So if you wanted to target based on how a specific voter answered a question, you can do that here. So I think generally people may use this to further targeting, but I think the better approach might be to build these profiles and segments based on responses, to kind of build a bigger data set. Unless you're doing 100,000 polls, or maybe you will get data in here, enough data, but you have that option. So if you just want to target for this specific question, people who answer jobs in the economy as their answer, you can see maybe there's one person here. So, but I'll clear that. So that is the Build Your List page. Again, really the most critical part of the application. If you can understand how to use this page, if you use it pretty quickly and easily, it's pretty much about 80% of what you're going to need to know in order to use and leverage Voter Trove effectively.